Sanctus Deo, the greeting of the angels to the shepherds on the first Christmas morning, is the message rung out by church bells down the centuries. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men. And that message is brought to us this morning by bells from all over the United Kingdom. I've got to know many bell ringers over the years, and you won't find more friendly or dedicated people anywhere. Unless you're a bell ringer yourself, it's hard to appreciate the concentration needed to make a good ringer. In change ringing, as it's called, the bells change their order of ringing at each pull of the rope, and the brain has to coordinate eyes, ears, and hands very precisely indeed. It's a British and especially English art. But this year we start in Scotland, in the famous Princes Street Gardens of Edinburgh, where the church of St. Cuthbert has strong musical tradition. The bells there are rung for us by members of the Scottish Society of Bell Ringers, who don't ring in any one church, but come together several times a year to ring all the bells in a certain area. Here then are the 8 bells of St. Cuthbert, Edinburgh. The 8 bells of St. Cuthbert, Edinburgh. And now we go south, to East Dereham in Norfolk, an ancient market town where William Cowper, the poet and writer of hymns, spent the last few years of his life. He lies buried in the parish church of St. Nicholas, one of the very few churches to have a bell tower separated from the church itself. There's been a church here since 1120. The ringers aren't quite as old as that, but the 6 men in the band have, between them, been ringing for nearly 300 years. Donald Miles, at 75, is the oldest, and George Adams rang his 50th peal this year at the marriage of one of the younger ringers, Susan Nairn, to the assistant curate. Incidentally, a peal on 8 bells is 5,000 or more changes. But of course the bells don't physically change their position, as some people seem to think, nor do the ringers dash madly around pulling a different rope each time. Our 8 ringers stand in a circle within the white walls of the ringing chamber, each grasping the coloured, fluffy bit of the rope called a sally, which gives a better grip. Debbie Coggles is 18 and rings the lightest bell. Treble's going, she says. She's gone. And we hear the 8 bells of St. Nicholas, East Dereham. bells of East Dereham in Norfolk. But let's stay a little longer in the countryside and visit another English village, this time in the cider country of Somerset, not far from Taunton. The parish of Bradford-on-Tome is linked with three others, Heathfield, Hillfarrance and Oak, and ringers from the four parishes have come together to ring for us today. There are two ladies in the band, Nicola Polk and Jane Beveridge, who is the tower captain at Heathfield. George Comer is the captain at Bradford, where Alan Lee has rung in every bell tower in the dioceses of Bath and Wells. The bells deserve a mention as well. Two of them were first cast at Exeter in the reign of Henry VI in 1450. Let's listen then to the 6 bells of St. Giles, Bradford-on-Tome. The 6 bells there of St. Giles Church, Bradford-on-Tome in Somerset. And now we hop over the Bristol Channel to Newport, as it used to be called. Now, of course, Newport, Gwent. St. Woolos Cathedral, up on the ridge there, has been looking down on the city in one form or another since 500 AD. It has a modern chancel built in the 1960s with an east window designed by John Piper, and a mural painted on canvas by the scenery painters of the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden. The present bells were dedicated 40 years ago, just after the start of the last war, and the cathedral has a band of about 20 ringers, many of them in their teens. But it's a job to keep them. They've recently lost 2 to the lures of London, and another to a different musical tradition, the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. Here then are the bells of St. Woolos Cathedral, Newport, led by their tower warden, Peter Bennett. And from Newport, we go back up the railway line towards London and stop in the centre of Reading at St. Mary's Church, founded by Queen Elfrida exactly 1,000 years ago. Here we find two remarkable people among the ringers. Mrs. Frida Dizerens has been ringing bells for 60 years, and her 16 children and grandchildren are all ringers as well. She's climbed the steep steps of the tower as usual at the age of 80, and now in a blue jumper and sensible brown shoes, she stands next to Bernard Grove, who had rung 1,000 peals before he was 28, at that time a ringing record. The tower captain is Frank Rivet. He's a computer expert, quite a help in this intricate business of change ringing, where mathematics and memory are important matters. The method they're ringing is called London Surprise Major, and although it is all written down in a baffling list of numbers, no visual aids are allowed in bell ringing, which accounts, I think, for the furrowed brows of the ringers. So it's concentration all round as we listen to the 8 bells of St. Mary's, Reading. Well, those are the bells of St. Mary's, Reading, celebrating its millennium this year. But now to a rather younger church, which began as a tin hut only 80 years ago, St. Donard, in the troubled area of East Belfast. The church was built with the shillings and half-crowns of a lot of ordinary people, plus the effort and drive of Canon Alec Moore, the rector for 40 years, to whom the 6 bells are a memorial. It's a small tower, and the ropes are shorter than usual, which makes ringing just a bit more difficult. But the Jeffrey family don't mind a bit. Jean, who conducts the band, has been ringing since the bells were hung 30 years ago. Colin and Karen, her children, are making it a family tradition. And 2 of the other 3 ringers, Elaine Milligan and Michael Dobson, are still at school. So let us hope that the bells of St. Donard's will help to bring peace and goodwill not only to Belfast, but to the whole of Northern Ireland. And from St Donard's, Belfast, we go due east across the Irish Sea to Penrith in Cumbria, and to St Andrew's Church, just a little way from the clock tower in the centre of the town. In the 18th century, the ringers here were also the local fire brigade, and they kept their fire engine handy in the entrance to the church, just in case of emergencies. Nowadays, there are 8 bells in the Norman tower, and each one has its own name. The treble is called Sweet Little Bell, and it's rung for us very sweetly by one of the 2 young ladies in the band, both wearing comfortable sweaters and slacks. Pat Evans on number 2 bell is married to Gareth on number 4. They met at Oxford. Between them on number 3 is Norman Brock, still in the 6th form at school, while the heavy tenor bell is in the capable hands of Robert Hawkins, the head gardener. But it's the schoolmaster, Leslie Bumfrey, who gives the orders as they start to ring what's known as a plain course of Stedman triples, named after Fabian Stedman, the Cambridge printer, who more or less invented the art of change ringing over 300 years ago. Here, then, are the 8 bells of St Andrew's, Penrith. Now we exchange the bells of St Andrew's, Penrith, for perhaps the best-known ring of all. In fact, these bells are rung regularly only 24 times a year, but you've heard them many times on great state occasions. It's a steep climb up the 120 steps, but at last, a bit out of breath, you reach the ringing chamber of Westminster Abbey. One of the ringers, Dr. John Armstrong, is a heart consultant, and as mine was beating rather fast, I was glad to learn that climbing steps and ringing bells is in fact quite good for the heart. It certainly hasn't done Harold Pitstowe any harm. He first rang the Abbey bells 55 years ago, and is still doing so at the age of 82, with his name now inscribed on one of the bells. The Pitstowe has also given out valuable help for many years in compiling this program. His successor as secretary of the Abbey Ringers is Bill Critchley, who has been ringing for a mere 40 years. There's a calm confidence about these 10 men standing on the red-tiled floor, grasping the ropes which lead to the famous bells above. Round the white walls are records of the peals they've rung for the Silver Jubilee, royal weddings, and other great and happy occasions. The 10 bells were dedicated 8 years ago in the presence of Her Majesty the Queen, whose Christmas broadcast will follow this program. So as we listen to the bells of Westminster Abbey ringing out from the heart of London, may I wish you, wherever you are, a very happy Christmas.